Hi there, everyone. Welcome to this month's Speaker Chat. I'm Tracy Eman, part of the WSA executive team, and really thrilled today to be interviewing one of our long-standing WSA Premier members, Patty Farmer. So excited, so happy to have you here again, Patty.
I'm excited to be here talking about my favorite subject.
And I love that subject. It's so important for so many of us, and yet you don't realize how you can utilize media. So we're talking about how you can leverage media to really positively impact your speaking business. And there's going to be lots of information that's going to be shared. And I'm just going to read a little bit from my script because I don't want to miss anything at the beginning here. We're going to actually have some takeaways today that are talking about how to leverage the media to get booked as a speaker, which is what Women's Speakers Association members all are looking for, right? Also discover how to use both social media and new media to attract your ideal client, and leveraging media to fill your events and your funnel. So Patty's going to be talking about all of these today, and I want to just share a little bit about Patty so you know that where her expertise comes from. And Patty and I think you and I have known each other probably for close to 10 years now. It's been a long time, and it's phenomenal, all the things that you've accomplished. So I'm really excited to be sharing you and this information with our membership. All right, so Patty Farmer is a marketing and media strategist, international speaker, podcast host, magazine publisher, and event producer, and works with small business owners, entrepreneurs, and speakers to attract and convert their ideal clients 24/7 so they can make a bigger impact in the world and bigger deposits into their bank account. Now that sounds great. Patty believes that we all have a message, and that her mission is to help them or help us master, market, and monetize that message in a way that creates transformation for both them and their clients while designing a lifestyle they want to live. And ultimately, I think that's what a lot of us are looking for. So Patty, I'm going to get started really quickly. I just want to quickly shout out to everyone that is watching right now. We invite you to put any comments. In fact, let's just have you just shout out where you're from, your name and where you're from. Please go ahead, if you're watching this from our Facebook groups, click on the link that gets you back into our Facebook page, because that's the page that we'll be monitoring for questions during this interview. All right. Are we ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. So how do you define leverage?
I think the simplest way that I could define it is to say that leverage means to gain an advantage through the use of a tool. I mean, that's really the most simple way that I can say it, to get a return on investment, right? And so for me, I have to tell you, Tracy, leverage and strategy are my two favorite words, which lead to my third, which maybe is my first, which is monetize, right? So all three of them go hand in hand together: leverage, strategy, monetize. Do one, the second, you get the third, right? So
that's really putting, like you're talking about strategy, it's like putting a plan in place, knowing what you're going to do to get to the goal that is going to increase your revenue, your awareness, your expertise, right?
Right. And you just said something that I really, really love and I hear often, is when people are always talking about revenue, right? We love revenue. But the reality really is there's a difference between revenue and profit.
Yes.
Right. And for me, I'm all about helping you to monetize to get more profit. Revenue is great. Profit is even better, right?
Yes, definitely. Because it takes into account the expenses that you put out. You want to be, your bottom line really is important. And I love that you do talk about that, because you're right. A lot of people do talk about just revenue, but revenue coming in when you have more going out is really not getting you ahead. And unfortunately, for some, that might stop you from sharing your message. And we really, 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 really feel it's important that you get out there and share your message. So this is going to be a great, great information for you to kind of come back and look at. It's always going to be resident on our Facebook page, and we will be putting a blog up as well. So you can come back and watch this again.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
that's always nice.
Yeah. Well, it makes it easier because people, it's a lot of times you'll watch something and you'll go, okay, this is great information. And then you'll get caught up in something else. And then you're like, where is that? I need to find it now. I need to hear Patty tell me what I should be doing. So how do I leverage the media to book myself as a speaker? As you know, that's an important part for most of us. We want to get on those stages in front of those audiences. How do we go about doing that?
Well, I think there's a couple things that I think that it's important to start with first, which one is to remember who the consumer is. And when you're trying to get booked as a speaker, the consumer is really not the audience. So I think that a lot of times, one of the things that I think is interesting, and I'll backtrack in 1 second, but I think one of the things that's interesting is a lot of times when we speak, we go out and we're looking for testimonials, right? We love to have those testimonials, right, of people who have listened to us as a speaker. But in reality, when you're looking to get booked as a speaker, the testimonial you really want is the person who booked you, the event host, right? Or the event planner. That is the person you want the testimonial from, because that's the person who's going to say, oh yes, you showed up, you gave them everything when you needed it, you communicated well, people wanted you back, right? They got a lot of feedback about how great you are. So when you're thinking about that, it's really important to know who really is your client. So when you're thinking about getting booked as a speaker, who is your actual client? So with that said, I think it's really important to remember a couple things. And one of my favorite quotes, and we all know I'm famous for the quotes, right?
Yes.
So one of my favorite one is by Jill Rowley, and she says, the modern consumer is digitally driven, socially connected, and mobile empowered. So
Wow.
when you think about that, that's really, really important to be thinking about everything on mobile, right? Everything digital, right? From your content to your visual content, right? And then also really being socially connected. So you have to remember that. And then you have to kind of fill in that blank as to who's really the consumer. So that's really kind of one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that I say. And then I think that one of the things that's key to getting booked as a speaker is really being clear about your brand, right? Because I think that's what they're looking for, really, is consistency in your voice. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting is when you ask people what their brand is, and they'll talk about, oh, it's my logo, and it's my font, or it's this, or it's that. The reality really is what your brand really is it's not even what you say it is, right? It's what people think, feel, say, and share about you. That is the key. What are they sharing about you? So to get booked as a speaker, to make that kind of close that loop right there, really honestly, getting booked as a speaker is really all about building relationships, right? And in order to build relationships, you have to have a consistent voice. I have to tell you, one of the things that I hear over and over and over again and pride myself on really is that people will tell me all the time, Patty, if I hear you on social media, when I hear you speak, when I meet you in person, when I get on the phone with you, you're exactly the same. And that is so important, because you have to ask yourself, when people see you on the stage, but then when you come down off that stage, or they run into you at another event, or an event planner meets you, or another speaker who also does events, right? Because we know that's a great way to get booked,
Yes.
right? Are they seeing that same person? Right? They may be your Facebook friend, and then when they meet you, they're like, wow, she wasn't anything like how she projects herself to be on social media. So I think really honestly, being really clear in your brand, really clear in your voice, being consistent, and realizing that building those relationships is absolute key. So getting booked as a speaker, knowing who those relationships are that you should build. So we do have people who are in our audience, and of course we serve them, right? We serve the people in our audience. But the reality really is that when you're getting booked as a speaker, in this one instance, you really are looking at the consumer being the person who is booking you as a speaker. So I would say one of the key relationships that you need to build is with other speakers who also do events. That is probably the number one way to get booked, is building relationships with them. And especially if their audience is your audience, specifically, right? So it's not just because they do events, but the reality is you really want to build those relationships with people who serve your audience, but in a different way.
Right. That's great. Just sort of sort of changing things just that slight bit, because you're right. A lot of times you're looking at, who that your customer avatar is, but your customer avatar is going to change depending on what you're doing. And when you're looking to be booked to speak, it definitely is adjusted a bit. So thank you very much for explaining that. I also liked what you're talking about your brand. Like realistically, we're building relationships. We really are our brand. We represent ourselves. And I love too, like, and it's so true, Patty, like whatever I'm watching you on social media, or we talk in person, or emails, I know I'm always going to get the real Patty. And I feel that's something that I'm always like to do as well. No matter when you meet me, it's like when you meet in person, it's like you want to give the person a hug because you've built that relationship with them already. So relationships also are key to really all your successes.
And I think it was really one of the things I had to learn in the beginning. It was the hardest lesson for me when I became a speaker, because I really thought I needed to change me. I would go to events and I would listen to people and I would watch them on the stage. And I was like, man, I don't know if I can do that, right? I don't know if I could, be this eloquent. I remember I used to tell my husband, I don't know if I could be that eloquent and, make 3 points and know when to turn this way and when to raise my voice and when to lower it, when to turn to the right, all of those things are like techniques that we learn, right? And I went through them all too. But here's one of the things I will say is one of the things that I got really clear on quickly is it isn't changing me. It is speaking in front of people who need to hear it the way I say it, right? And I think that is something that is really, really important too, is again, that's about your brand, right? It's about your voice. And so that was really tough for me because yes, I hired a speaking coach. I did all of those things, but I have to tell you, Tracy, to this day, and I've been a speaker for 8 years now, every time I get on the stage, before I walk out there, the one thing I always have to remember is it's not even about us. It's always about them. It's never about us. And so as long as we are really clear on that and we realize that we're there to serve, I think that right then and there, you'll be yourself.
I think that takes away the nerves too. Once you take, because I think most of us when we get on stage still have a little bit of nerves just before, but as soon as you transition your thought process into realizing that, you're there to share a message that's going to help others or whether it's to achieve their goals, to be inspired, whatever it might be, but it really has nothing to do with you. You're the messenger in that particular case. And it kind of takes some of that stress off too.
It does. And I think one of the other things that I think is key about getting booked as a speaker too, and I think this one's kind of one that doesn't get talked about a lot. And I think a lot of that is about speaker etiquette. Now, I have to tell you, I understood it in the beginning because I was a cheerleader in school. And so I learned really early on that, when you're a cheerleader, you represent the school, right? All the time. I didn't really know any other way to do it. But now that I actually do events and I do have speakers come in and stuff, I have to tell you how people act off the stage is really, really important. Now, I have to tell you, I can only speak for myself, but I personally believe that when somebody invites me to come to their stage and I'm there to serve, that doesn't just mean the hour I'm on the stage, right? If it's a 2-day event or a 3-day event, it means I am there. Because how does it look to the audience when these people put on this event and they're like, oh, the speakers don't even stay for the event, so how important can it be? They're not even here, right? You need to show up for the whole event. You're not there to get booked just for the time you're on the stage or the time that you're up there getting to talk about your business. You are representing that host, and I think it's really important. And it's a small world, speakers, we are, right? And a small world of speakers who put on events, and the thing that can kill your chances of getting booked is when somebody tells somebody else that, you know what, I had her come get on my stage, and as soon as she was done, we didn't see her the whole rest of the event or something like that. So I think you need to remember that if you want people to get booked, they need to know that you're right there, right? That's for me, man. I'm tweeting about their event even when I'm done, right? I'm talking about the other speakers. It's really, really important to have speaker etiquette. It's not talked about a lot, but I think it's very, very important.
It is very important. And I've been to events where, somebody's like flown in and then flown out and you're like, okay, well, maybe I wanted to know more about them, but they're not here anymore. And I'm going to, redirect my questions to somebody else. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes here to just go over to our Facebook page. So bear with me here. I see there's lots of comments coming in, and oh, it's actually gonna let me. So we have Dawn Marie from Fallbrook, California here, Donna Duffy from Wilmington, Delaware, Teresa Sims from Woodstock, Ontario says, great topic, ladies. Gwen Leopard says, great point. Be in front of people that need to hear it from your voice. It's about them, so be yourself. And Gwen said, wonderful to hear your voice again, Patty. Donna says, love that, Patty. Such a great reminder of how that shows our character and our support for the host. And Sally Arkle Bowles says, great tips. So wonderful. Thanks so much, everybody. And Patty, if at some point too, you want to throw a question out to the people that are watching, feel free to just sort of, send those out. That would be awesome.
Sure.
Because sometimes as you're sort of sharing your information, it would be great to say, how many of you do this, or how many of you have been in this situation? And if I see something, I will too, because I'd love to. It's always, once again, you're building relationships. So people that are going through the same things as you at the same time, or have been there, done that, and can help you, I'll help to support all of us in our speaking business.
Well, I have a question. So that's
yes.
a good one. You just
Beautiful.
segued right into that, right?
Yes.
So here's my question, and people could probably just put A, B, C, or D. So we'll just kind of make it nice and simple. So when you're thinking about leveraging the media, so A, are you like have this big smile on your face because you're crushing it, right? You've got it. B would be that you're like frustrated, like you want to pull your hair out of your head because you just don't know what to do, right? C is that you just kind of cross your fingers and you're kind of hoping that all the things you're doing are working. And D is that your head's in the sand and you're just like, I have no clue how to leverage the media. I'm a speaker, I'm speaking, and I have no idea if I'm leveraging it at all. So which is it? A, B, C, or D? Tell us, we want to know.
Yes, so go ahead and type those in there. And maybe what we'll do is we'll move on to our next question and then come back. Can you remember what those were?
Yes, of course.
Fabulous. So we talked about some of the takeaways, and one of them was, how do I leverage the media to fill my workshops, events, and coaching programs? Because a lot of us are speakers in order to get our message out and to offer our services. So how do we leverage the media to do that?
So there's a lot of different ways that I think we can do it. So some of the obvious ways are being on a podcast, right? That's a great way where you actually get to offer something that's either a freebie or a low-end product, right? So that's one of the ways that you can do it. And this should always be about something that has to do with that event or workshop or something, right? Another way is to, guest blog for somebody, or if you want to write for a digital magazine, right? I have a magazine and I allow people to contribute to it all the time. And a lot of times I will actually ask them if they have something, I will allow them to promote it in the magazine. So that's really a great way to be able to do that. There's also live or virtual events where you get to talk about what you do and they're interviewing you. Look at what we're doing right now. I mean, these are really great ways. There's also a lot of great ways to do it in Facebook groups. Now, I have to tell you, I've seen this new trend that's been coming up in Facebook groups, and I really like it. And what it is, several times now, and I actually do it for my clients too, where somebody that has a Facebook group will actually put a post out that says, I'm looking for somebody who can talk to my Facebook group of 8,000 people, right? Or 2,000 people or 2,500 people about this topic. Now, if you have a topic that you can share, people in a Facebook group, they want to serve their audience. So the reality really is, when's the last time as a speaker you went and spoke at an event where you got to be in front of 8,000 people? Right? And so you can do that in Facebook groups for people who have audiences and actually speak to their audience and serve, and then get to offer something that will help move them into your community. Right? So really that's the name of the game to getting your events filled, your funnel filled, really is, how do I find ways to serve, not sell, to serve in front of somebody else's community? And what's the reciprocity of that, right? So really think about it. Because I have to tell you, I have a speaker group, right? You're in my speaker group. I have a speaker group, and there's 3,000 people in my group. And if somebody ever approached me and said, oh, you know what, Patty, I would love to talk to your group about this, this, and this, and be of value or of service to them. And if I felt like it was of value and of service to my group, I for sure would let them come in and do it, because it's always about service, right? So that is a key way that I'm not seeing very many people do.
Right.
And I think it's really an opportunity right now for people who have Facebook groups to really cash in on that.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, you want to be giving, and like you said, where you're in that method of service is so important. And I love that idea. I'm just reading some of these messages as they're coming up. So I'm loving this, ladies. You're joining us and entering your responses, which is awesome. So Gwen says between A and B, going back to our last question. Dawn Marie says staying for the full event when possible is just common courtesy. I remember people leaving after they performed at an event and people were still performing to no one because the audience was also those who performed. Bottom line is there's no audience, and that was sad. And that's true. Like you want to make sure that you're always supporting others. And so when you walk away, just think about the impact you could have. Dawn Marie also said she forgot the question, but she says A or B is for. So A is crushing it, B is frustrated. Donna is said between A and B. Gwen,
C is crossing your fingers.
C is crossing your fingers.
And
yep.
D is putting your head in the sand.
And being an ostrich. Shalanda says B and C combination. I put the work in and use the tips I get from others and hope everything works out well. Cross some fingers, right? Along the way, Shalanda. Tanya just joined us and said, hi, ladies. Elaine Newberding. It says, first time hearing Patty live. Hi, Patty. Gwen says 8,000 people audience. That's what I want to be in front of. Gwen also said how to serve inside someone's group, bring value. So important tips that people are taking away from this too, Patty. And Shalanda, thank you for that. I'm going to start reaching out to group hosts. And then Kay Page Engel says, Patty Farmer is the greatest. You have some fans on here, over and above me and everybody else that already loves you. That's fabulous. Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a great idea. I think I'm going to be doing that too. It would be a great opportunity to sort of share and help other people out. So I love that you shared that.
It's really all about the community, right? So we're all talking about what is the community and how we can be looking for those opportunities. And I think that is absolutely key now.
Mm-hmm. And it's what sets you apart, right?
Absolutely. I think that is what sets you apart. And that's truly using leverage, right? Mm-hmm. That's just a strategy. It's just a strategy. And you can do it in LinkedIn groups too. But I think that it is really, really key whenever you can do it, right? I mean, I think it's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's not as scary as it sounds. It's like especially you're reaching out. It's in a group. So if you're afraid of at this point, maybe being, standing on the front of the stage, something like what we're doing, like, really, and watch for people with telesummits and so forth too. Another opportunity for you to leverage other people's audiences and that collaborative effect too.
Absolutely. And to piggyback on what we were just saying, so for those that want to do it, when you think about it, like the example I gave of the person that had a group with 8,000 people. So let's remember, you didn't pay for a hotel, you didn't fly anywhere, and literally you're wearing a shirt and maybe your jammy bottoms even, right? But here's the thing, you want to make sure if you do it, that you offer something of value, so that you have to make sure that you get them out of that audience and into yours, right? You need to do that. So make sure you do it. For me, I like to use my magazine. That is, really a good way for people to do it. But whatever you have, there's a lot of different things you can do. This isn't the time to sell. This is the time to serve.
Right. Great points. So if we're talking about media, can you tell us what the difference is between social media and new media, and what are some of the differences in how I should use each to leverage my business?
Sure. So social media, right, is just that, social, right? You know, and I think that is really, really important. But new media is pretty much everything other than that. So like a podcast is new media, an online summit is new media, an event is new media. There's a lot of other things that are media that are not social media. So there's two different kinds of media, and people get really caught up in using social media. So here's one of the things that I think is really, really important to remember. We don't use social to sell. We sell with social. I think it's really important to know the difference.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't sell on social, you use social with that, right? You know, so social with it, right? It's not supposed to, you shouldn't be selling on social so much, really honestly, but you should be using social. So really keep the social in sales, right? I think that is what's really, really important. So I think when you're thinking about that form of media and when you're thinking about new media, I think a lot of the differences that it's about the content that you're using, right? So we all know that content is king, right? And visual content is really, really important. But I think that here's the crossover. So I want everybody to remember is every single thing you do, you should be creating visual content. So if you have a book, say, so if you're a speaker and you've also had a book, what's a book? Well, I guess a book is 30,000 to 50,000 words of content, right? That you can be leveraged to consistently be promoting your book. Same thing could be said for your speech, right? So if you have a speech, have you broken that speech down into bite-sized pieces, right? So it could be made into an ebook, which you could be talking about on a podcast, right? So that's kind of new media, right? But it can be broken down into multiple social media memes, right? So that's kind of social media, but they all need to lead back to something. So I think that is really important. How you use Pinterest and Instagram that lead back. I was just at an event that I spoke at, and actually Paige was there too, and she was the one that gave me this tip. So shout out to Paige right there, talking about how on Pinterest now you can have 5 images that lead back to a link. So for my magazine, 5 different articles, and actually I have found out since then it's actually even more than that, where you can link them back to something. So how important is that? So when you're thinking about it, here's content, and it could be something you do on a podcast. So I think one of the things that I think is really important is what you do before, during, and after. So look at this right here that we're doing right now in this Facebook Live. Every time you're on a Facebook Live, or every time you're on a podcast, or every time you're in somebody's magazine, or you guest blog, any of those things, media, you're in front of people, that's media, right? What are you doing to promote it? Here's what most people do. What most people do is they get on Facebook the day of and say, I'm really excited to be on blah, blah, blah. But the reality is you should have been talking about it before. You should be talking about it after with takeaways. You should be writing a blog about it. You should be embedding the link from YouTube or wherever they put it inside the blog post, and email it to your list with a call to action. So there's a lot of different ways you can be leveraging that. And if you spoke about something like this, which like I'm speaking about leveraging media for speakers, believe me, this is going to go, when you do that blog, it'll go to my whole list of people that have ever heard me speak at an event, all the virtual ones, right? So really honestly, what are you doing to promote that? That kind of goes back to etiquette again as well. But the bottom line is use each one of those medias differently, but together. And it's always about content.
And you're not reinventing the wheel each time either. So leveraging is the fact that, yes, like you said, you have a book, you have a speech, you have, you have your interviews, and you can pull pieces from them without starting from scratch. In fact, we kind of started our conversation about that earlier today, is that we have all this information at our fingertips and things that we've created before and questions that we've been asked, and to kind of go back and kind of review those on occasions and bring them back in. You don't have to go try and find something new, because people digest information in small pieces and in different ways, and they need to hear it more than once for it to stick in. And so you don't need to keep finding new stuff unless there obviously is new information that it does need to be shared at that time.
And I think that part of that too is we have automation now, right? So because we have automation, every single thing you do, you should be pulling all the key points out of it, creating memes or other different types of content, and then putting it in your automation. One of the things that really cracks me up is I was on this interview. I have to tell you, it had to be at least 5 years ago. And it was talking about collaboration. And about every 3 months, it still shows up on Twitter. She posted again and says, one of our most downloads, replay, popular, interview. And finally, like about a year ago, I thought, I got to go listen to that again because it was like 5 years ago, right? So the thing is, we have automation. Be putting those things back out if it was good content. And sometimes you might want to look at or listen, whichever the case may be, to what that content was you've done previously and see what can you do to update it, to revise that. Things change, right? What can you do so that you can reissue it again and say, oh, these are some things that have changed, right? So that's always a really good way to stay current and relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I know that with a couple of my clients too, things that got put up on Pinterest 5 years ago are generating more links back to their website now. And it's like, so yeah, you're always putting information out there. You kind of want to watch and see what is out there and then kind of just elaborate on it. I'm just going to go back over to our group again because there's lots of information here. So Gwen says, great reminder, offer something of value so you can get some of that audience into your tribe. Takeaway, don't use social to sell. In part, it's about creating digital content. And how far in advance is best to start talking about being a guest?
My answer to that is as soon as you get booked. So as soon as they book you, this is a great time to thank them. Use social media to thank them for that opportunity, right? Because here's what's going to happen. Like if anybody's was hearing me talk about today, I was talking about how my favorite topic was leveraging the media. So part of that was, yes, that's absolutely true. But I'm hoping that other people who read that, oh, I didn't know that Patty could talk about leveraging the media and that's her favorite topic. We should have her come on our show too, right? So these are all things that you can do. Not only that, but if you have collateral that you use, like you're going to be at an event, take pictures of that collateral. Take pictures of the empty room when you go in, as a speaker, we always go look at the setup. Take a picture of that, right? There's always something you can be saying about it. Oh, looking forward to seeing this room filled tomorrow, right? And afterwards, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can say that you can be talking about it. So you're not saying over and over and over again, excited to have been on this event, right? There's a lot of different ways you can say it. And another great way to get booked too is to really be talking about who you shared the stage with, who you shared on the podcast with. Was there somebody else? Was there, look at other episodes and stuff. Those are always really, really great ways to be able to say, hey, I saw that you were on such and such podcast. I was just interviewed on that podcast too. Do a shout out for them, tag them. These are all great ways for people to go, oh, and other people to see, oh, I listened to that episode. Oh, let me go listen to your episode. So there's a lot of ways to do it that aren't like me, that you do it through service.
Yes. And that's a huge way of leveraging, tagging people and sharing out their information with like you said, mentioning like, oh, hey, I was on the podcast as well. Like that's kind of, it builds that relationship. Once again, it's something that you have in common. And if you're both speaking to similar audiences, if something comes up, people are going like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, Patty talked about leveraging the media. And what I also like about it, because you know how much I love keywords, is like leveraging the media. I'm going to search for leveraging the media. What's going to come up? Patty Farmer is talking about how to leverage the media, right? So you definitely have to be really utilizing all media that way.
I want to give one more, if I can, I want to give one more strategy about getting booked. I know that's probably the thing people want the most. So I'm going to, every time we can touch on that, I want to be able to come back to that. So one of the other great ways, this is also a strategy, is when people are shouting out and saying that they're speaking at this event, right? And that event, they're talking about it and it's happening next week, right? Or next month, they're talking about it. I have to tell you, if I see somebody talking about an event that they're speaking at, and I know that they serve my target audience, right? And I know they do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look up that event. And when I look up that event, I'm going to look and see when that event is. And then I'm going to backlog about 6 months. And then I'm going to put it in my calendar that in 6 months to check on call for speakers for that event the next time.
Oh,
So, I mean, really think about it. Every time I find out about an event or Google, conferences, and then look and see. It might be too late this year, but I got to tell you, every day I open up my calendar and it'll tell me about, check and see about call for speakers for this, check and see about call for speakers. Because when I hear about it, too late for this year, but always be thinking ahead for next year. So, and then when I reach out to them and I say, I just want to know, what are you planning on having a call for speakers? They're like, Patty, thank you so much for checking in. We haven't even started booking our speakers. Don't you want to be the first person in line? Right? So think about how you can use that tip, because I have to tell you, I have gotten booked for lots of speaking engagements by doing that one tip. That's a great strategy, right? It's a writer downer.
That is definitely a writer downer. That is awesome. And you're right. I've seen enough of those that kind of gone through and went, that would be good. But it's like, next, like you said, next week or something along those lines. And I love that, because as a speaker, we can't expect everybody to be searching for us and finding us per se. We need to be doing some of that work too, some of that legwork as well. So great tip. Wow. That's awesome.
And I think one of the other things, I know I'm on a roll right now. One of the other things I would say, here's where building relationships matter. Here's another way that you can get booked by building a relationship is this. One of my goals, every single time I speak, here's my goal. Now, there are times that you'll speak at an event and they'll have you come back again, right? I mean, there are times that happens, but there are more times than not that they want new speakers, right? That they want different speakers. So here's one of the things that I do. My goal is every single time I speak, if they're an organization that wants different speakers all the time, my goal is to replace myself every single time. So when I have a conversation with them and they're like, thank you so much, Patty, it was great, whatever they say, the next thing I'm going to say to them is like, I know right now you really want to relax and kind of take a break after this, but just so that you know, now that I know your audience, right, and I see what you're all about, when it's time for you to book speakers, just so you know, I already have names in mind that I think would be perfect for your audience and that are a dream to work with. Let me know when you're looking and I will. And I have to tell you, I love to replace myself by giving them names of other people. So if you think about this and look at the big picture, if you had relationships with people and everybody was doing that and replacing themselves with other people, how often would you get booked?
Wow. That's another, it's like, okay, everybody digest that one, right? That is, because you become very indispensable to the event planners too, because a lot of times they're not only booking for that one event, they might be called in to book for some other events. And then guess what? They can have you as a speaker again because it's a new event, right? Like, so if you're helping them out, they're going to help you out. It is that reciprocity that you were talking about before, right?
So that's how I became an international speaker. Yeah. I don't know if you ever heard that, but that's how I became an international speaker. I got a phone call from somebody who said, Patty, the speaker who was going to speak on lead generation for LinkedIn got appendicitis. Will you come over and speak? I said, when? They said, tonight. I said, where? They said, London. We'll pay you $10,000 if you'll get on a plane tonight and come over and speak. I was like, okay. I wrote my speech on the plane.
Oh my goodness.
And literally went over there, and I got booked for 3 other speaking engagements while I was there, all international. And that one saying yes, I became an international speaker. Wow. So you never know, but that was because I had built a relationship with somebody that I had put her name in for a speaking engagement because I thought she would be perfect. So I was top of mind of her. I bought brain cells. That's what I like to call that. Right? I was top of mind when she needed somebody to go, wait a second, Patty did that great thing for me. And so I want to do it for her. And so think about it. Serve first. Here's what I always want to say. It's a great quote. Lead with contribution and compensation will follow. Always.
Oh, that's a great quote. Yeah, I love that story. No, I hadn't heard it before, but I'm glad that you shared that today because it just makes us realize that it can happen. And I'm just looking at some of the comments again. Gwen says, takeaways, building relationships and being of service, using shout outs and tagging others that have been on the same podcast. Donna says, great call for speakers strategy, Patty. Love that. Gwen says, call for speakers, put it on the calendar for 6 months out. When you see an event that serves your tribe, reach out before they're even filling for the next year. Thank you so much, ladies, for putting these in too, because it's so awesome for us to go back and read some of the takeaways as you see them too. Gwen, huge tip for relationship building: know people that can replace you, recommend others. And Gwen said, Pattyism, bought brain cells. Thanks, Gwen. Love that. Wow. See, and you're right. We're talking about what we're going to talk about today as far as, specifics, and we've kind of like went on a whole different tangent in a way, but talking about how we can, get in front of the audiences that we want to serve. So this has been incredible. We got a couple more questions here. Let's talk about, how do I leverage social media to attract my ideal clients and partners? And we want to take this more specific. So locally versus not local. How do we leverage social media to attract our ideal clients and partners?
So I have to tell you, local media is really great. So I don't think people really realize how much local media can really help them. And social media can help with that too. So one of the things is, if you have a book or you have an event, right, donating a percentage of the proceeds from your book or that event to a charity will garner interest from local media, and they'll talk about you on social media for that, right? You get, local media shows up, that shows up on social media, right? So I love to be able to do that whenever I can. Also, if you have a podcast or a magazine or any type of thing that you're doing, Facebook Lives, whatever the case may be, offering to interview them in some type of way to promote an event that's local, I think is really, really important. And it really can be good for you. The other thing is, sponsor local events. If you sponsor local events, it can piggyback on their media coverage. Mm. So, for example, one of the things that I did once was, they were doing an event and it was at an art show. And I thought it was really brilliant because the person who had this art gallery actually opened it up and sponsored it and let them come into their art gallery. So here there were artists having their stuff on the wall, but they came in and let them use that space. So there were some big names, and it was like, I won't say the names, but it was like medical ones, right? So some of the medical ones. So they came in and did that. And then I came in and sponsored it and provided like the food and the appetizers and stuff. But because the organization that was doing it was for charity, it was a not-for-profit, right? Because of that, they got a lot of media that was about that. But because you were a sponsor, you were doing a good thing, but it was a win-win-win, right? I mean, do it because it's the right thing to do and it's a good thing, right? I mean, don't do it for the wrong reasons. But if you do, it has a lot of kickback for you in the media, right? Because they're talking about them and they're talking about the sponsor. So sponsorship is really, really key, even if you do in-kind sponsorship. And I know Charmaine is really a great member. She was on the cover of my magazine this issue, and she talks a lot about sponsorship. So I think that is really, really important. Also, highlight your expertise in the community you live. If you do that and you talk about that, I think that's really important. In my local community, I do a business development book club and then a personal development one every other month. And so we're always doing that. And then when everybody comes, I kind of do interviews there and I talk about them, and we use that on social media to promote them and their business. And they really like it because they talk about everything in that conversation that they're talking about, and they're using their area of expertise to share about that business development. I mean, you read a book and I read a book and somebody else reads a book, and we're all going to get something a little bit different out of that book. And then being able to give shout outs to them. So use that local one. And then lastly, I think the number one way to use local media is to hijack. And a lot of people don't know what newsjacking is, but newsjacking is when you monitor the news, and anytime you can insinuate yourself into something that's happening is really, really important. I'll give you two of my favorite examples. So remember, I think it was like a couple years ago when the lights went out at the Super Bowl. So remember when that happened? And literally in 10 minutes, Oreo was like, oh, you can still dip Oreos in the dark, right? I mean, boom, they were on it. And then when that Southwest came out with the one, when the guy was pulled off the airplane, right? They says, oh, we lower prices. And, they kind of talked about they were able to do it. But to take it to an entrepreneur level, newsjacking is really about something that's happening. So for example, last year I had a client who's a financial planner, and she lived in Florida, and that was when they had the really, really bad hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
And they were interviewing people about being prepared for the emergency, right? And so everybody was talking about, oh my gosh, what should we do to get prepared? And so I was able to get her interviewed on local news as a financial advisor. What does that have to do with a hurricane, right? But she was talking about how we're all worried about being prepared for the hurricane, but why are we not worried or taking care of things in emergencies that happen to us in our life? And we were able to newsjack that, and she got so much coverage that she ended up going to Washington, D.C. and being able to be interviewed at the Capitol.
Wow.
And that was just newsjacking. So thinking about what's happening in the media, if you just really think about it, it's a really, really great way to promote yourself, your business, and help community.
Wow. Yeah, that's I've seen some of that going on, and I think it is definitely, if some people are already watching it, there's a whole bunch of information on that. And, if you think about, check the hashtags that they're using, make it so that it's easy for people to find your content too while they're doing that. I think that was just definitely awesome. And
I could do a whole talk on how to use hashtags and monetize your business just by using hashtags.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. It's like keywords on hyperspeed. Okay. So we got takeaway, give a percentage of your event to a local cause, creates interest. Remember sponsorship for local events and newsjacking. Thank you once again, ladies. Lots of great information, don't you think? All right, we got one last question. We're kind of winding up pretty soon here. What are the most important questions to ask potential JV partners?
So here's something really funny. I think the number one question you should ask is, how can I serve and support you? People always forget that question. It's so funny because I have people who ask me all the time and they have all these questions. I think the most important question is, how can I serve and support you, right? If you're looking for somebody to be a potential JV partner or a strategic partner, how about getting involved in something they already have on the table and serving first? I know it's kind of a theme I keep going back to, but I think it's really important. The second thing is really knowing who their demographic is, right? And making sure it's your audience. So one of the things that I think is really important, and when you're talking about leveraging and strategy and monetizing, which is what I talked about earlier, being so important, here's the number one thing that I think is important. Make sure that you're just not looking at target market. Everybody wants to talk about that. Target market, make sure the audience is right. Make sure target market. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Target market is first step. Really, the most important thing is, are you talking to your target buyer? Not the same thing. And for those of you out there who don't know the difference, I'm just going to tell you. So your target market is somebody who has a problem and you have a solution. But a target buyer is somebody who has a problem that you have a solution and they're actively looking for that solution. And I got to tell you, when speakers are putting on events, one of the things I see all the time is they're always worried about putting butts in seats. And I have to tell you, it's all about putting buyers in seats, not butts in seats. If I'm going to come and speak, I want to make sure that the right people are there, not just a butt in the seat. I really want to make sure that it's the right people. I'd rather speak in front of less people that are the right people than more people that are not. So I think it's really, really important to know who your target buyer is.
Yeah, agreed. Because otherwise you have a lot of tire kickers, and we don't really want those tire kickers, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So is there any other questions we want to ask those JV partners, or is that's the
most important one? Who they serve, I think, is really important. Making sure you know who they serve. It's also a great opportunity to find out that if they mention people that they serve and you don't serve them, is there an opportunity there? I think it's really important to know what the value they bring to the marketplace is and what they think the value is that they bring to the marketplace. One of the biggest things that I think happens when people JV together is that one person is looking at the value that they think they bring, and the other person is saying, oh, well, if we're doing this joint venture, this is what you're doing and this is what I'm doing. And if they don't think the value is the same, there will be a problem. So you want to make sure that you know what the value they bring to the marketplace, what they think it is, right? And making sure that you're in front of the right audience and that it's a target buyer. And not only that, I think, what is it that they're going to want you to do? Like, is it that they just want you to be a promotional partner? Like if they have a launch or a book, they just really want you to promote. Do they want you to provide something, right? Is it something that's going to be your time? And I think one of the biggest things you really need to know is how much prep work are you going to do? Because I have to tell you, in the beginning, when I first started collaborating and doing joint ventures, I would just look at my calendar and go, oh yeah, I'm free for then. I would do it. And I forgot to really realize how much prep time I was going to have. So you really need to know when is the promotional time for that, as well as when the activity is. I think that is super, super key.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for providing some of those questions that we need to ask. And, that's the thing, we need to ask, right? A lot of times it's not going to be given to us up front. So I'm glad that you put those out there. And yeah, people are like loving the whole target buyer versus, seats and butts. Seats and butts, butts and
Butts and
seats.
seats. Yep.
I knew that was a Tracyism, but please don't use that one. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all this great information. There's a lot of takeaways here. And the cool thing is that you can read back through some of the comments because the ladies have done a wonderful job of pulling some pieces out. But if you have any questions, I'm sure Patty will come back to and take a look in here, and any questions, please go ahead if you're watching this afterwards and enter those into the comments area. And Patty, how can people who, I know a lot of people are already connected with you on social media and so forth, but how can they connect with you? And then I think you have an offer for us.
Sure. So the easiest way to connect with me is just to go to my website, which is pattyfarmer.com, Patty with a Y. So pattyfarmer.com. And then you can see all my social media there. Right. And so I think that's important. But if you'd like to get a copy of my magazine, which is all about what is current and relevant and on trend right now of what you need to know, you can go to pattyfarmer.com/magazine. So
wonderful. I'm going to have to get that. I know that I've seen it come up, and I'm excited that Charmaine is on the cover, and that's so exciting. When did you start the magazine?
So we started the magazine. We've had 5 issues, so we're getting ready for the 6th issue, and we do it quarterly, so a year and a half. Okay. But I have to tell you, Tracy, I think an article about keywords would be phenomenal in my magazine. Just saying.
We can talk after this.
There you go.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And once again, thank you, Patty, for coming on here. I'm so excited that we actually organized this date and got it happening. And I'm sure that we'll have you back for something else as well. Definitely, everybody, be sure to add any comments that you might have. Thank you so much, Gwen, for putting in the link to Patty's magazine too. That's awesome. Thank you. We're going to let you go. Have a good rest of your week and month, and we'll see you next month for Speaker Chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.